The morning briefing at Forward Operating Base Sultan was routine until Commander Hayden Graves pointed directly at Dr. Maya Chen and delivered the warning that would define her next 12 hours. "If you touch that Barrett, you're off this team for good." The words hung in the air like smoke from distant artillery, carrying the weight of absolute authority and zero negotiation. From what city are you watching this incredible story? Drop your location in the comments and let us know what surprised you most about Dr. Maya Chen. If stories like this move you, tales of everyday hidden heroes doing extraordinary things, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. There are more untold stories waiting. And remember, sometimes the most important person in the room is the one nobody notices. Dr. Maya Chen sat perfectly still in the back row of folding chairs, her medical bag positioned neatly at her feet, her expression calm and professional as always. To everyone in that briefing room, she was exactly what her paperwork indicated: a Navy trauma doctor assigned to provide medical support for high-risk operations. Competent, reliable, and completely unremarkable beyond her ability to keep people alive when bullets started flying. What they didn't know about Dr. Maya Chen would save all their lives before the sun set over Sultan Valley. For 18 months, Maya had been the quiet presence on missions that pushed the boundaries of what special operations units were asked to accomplish. She patched up training injuries, monitored the health of operators pushing their bodies beyond normal human limits, and maintained the kind of professional invisibility that allowed her to observe without being observed. The SEAL teams she supported respected her competence and appreciated her calm demeanor under pressure, but they saw her as support personnel, essential but not operational. Commander Graves had been particularly clear about maintaining that distinction. His Barrett .50 caliber rifle was positioned near the communications equipment, draped in protective cloth and surrounded by an invisible barrier that everyone understood but no one questioned. The weapon was legendary within the community, not just for its devastating precision at extreme range, but because Graves never allowed anyone else to handle it. Not his spotter, not his team leaders, not even the armorer who maintained every other weapon in their arsenal. "The Barrett stays where it is," Graves had explained during Maya's first deployment briefing. "Medical personnel maintain medical equipment. Operators maintain operational equipment. That boundary keeps everyone alive and mission-focused." Maya had nodded her understanding, filed the information appropriately, and spent the next year and a half watching that rifle sit unused in dozens of situations where its capabilities might have changed outcomes. She said nothing, asked no questions, and maintained the professional distance that kept her in good standing with command structure that valued competence over curiosity. But Maya Chen carried secrets that went far beyond her medical training, and today those secrets would surface in ways that would shock everyone who thought they knew her. The mission briefing for Operation Desert Falcon outlined a routine convoy escort through terrain that intelligence assessed as low risk. 3 vehicles carrying supplies and personnel to an outpost in Sultan Valley, following established routes with predetermined stopping points and communication protocols. Maya's role was standard: provide medical support for any injuries sustained during transport, monitor team health in desert conditions, and maintain readiness for trauma treatment if the convoy encountered hostiles. "Weather's clear. Intelligence shows minimal hostile activity in the operational area, and we have air support on standby if needed," Graves explained, pointing to digital maps that showed their route through rocky terrain that offered excellent visibility in all directions. This should be a straightforward run with medical personnel along for routine support. Maya reviewed her equipment checklist with practiced efficiency: trauma supplies, IV fluids, emergency medications, portable surgical kit. Everything she needed to keep people alive if the mission went sideways, which statistics suggested was unlikely, but experience had taught her to prepare for anyway. What she didn't review was the small leather journal buried at the bottom of her medical bag, filled with ballistic calculations and range estimations written in precise handwriting. Or the worn shooting glove tucked between medical supplies, its leather softened by years of use in conditions that had nothing to do with treating patients. Or the compact spotting scope disguised as a medical instrument, capable of accurate range finding at distances that would surprise anyone who noticed it. The convoy departed FOB Sultan at 0800 hours under clear desert skies that promised excellent visibility throughout the day. Maya rode in the second vehicle, positioned between communications equipment and supply crates, her medical bag secured but accessible in case of emergency. The terrain was exactly as briefed: Rocky, open, with good sight lines that should have made ambush impossible. Should have. The first RPG round struck the lead vehicle at 10:47 hours, approximately 37 minutes into what was supposed to be a routine supply run. The explosion lifted the armored Humvee into the air and dropped it on its side, trapping the crew and immediately eliminating their primary offensive capability. The second round missed the convoy entirely, but served its purpose of driving the remaining vehicles into predetermined positions where they could be targeted by coordinated small arms fire. Maya was thrown against the vehicle's interior wall when their driver executed emergency evasive maneuvers, but her first instinct wasn't to check for her own injuries. She was already reaching for her medical bag and calculating trauma response priorities based on the engagement they had just entered. Contact left. Contact left. The radio crackled with urgent reports as the convoy's security team attempted to identify threat locations and coordinate defensive fire. Through her vehicle's armored windows, Maya could see muzzle flashes from elevated positions that provided the attackers with clear fields of fire while offering minimal exposure to return fire. The tactical situation was deteriorating rapidly. The lead vehicle was immobilized with unknown casualties. The remaining vehicles were taking accurate fire from multiple directions, and the terrain offered no immediate options for cover or withdrawal. Air support was 15 minutes away, which might as well have been 15 hours given the intensity of incoming fire. Medical! We need medical forward. The call came through the radio with the urgency that Maya had heard too many times before. Someone in the lead vehicle was wounded, possibly critically, and needed immediate attention that could only be provided by moving through active fire zones to reach them. Maya grabbed her trauma bag and prepared to exit her vehicle, but the amount of incoming fire made movement impossible without immediate suppression of at least some of the hostile positions. The security team was doing their best with available weapons, but they were outgunned and outpositioned by attackers who had clearly planned this engagement carefully. That's when Maya looked at Commander Graves's Barrett .50 caliber rifle, still secured in its protective covering, unused while the people she was supposed to keep alive were bleeding in an overturned vehicle. She thought about the warning. If you touch that Barrett, you're off this team for good. She thought about the wounded operators in the lead vehicle who would die without immediate medical attention. She thought about the ballistic calculations she had memorized years ago, the range estimations she still practiced in her head during quiet moments, and the shooting techniques that had nothing to do with medical school, but everything to do with keeping people alive. Maya Chen reached for the Barrett. The rifle felt familiar in her hands despite the months since she had held any weapon more complex than medical instruments. The weight distribution, the balance point, the mechanical precision of its action. Everything about the Barrett spoke to training that had nothing to do with treating trauma patients and everything to do with delivering precision fire at ranges that most people considered impossible. Chen, what are you doing? The voice belonged to Petty Officer Vance, Graves's usual spotter, who was staring at Maya with a mixture of confusion and alarm. Put that down before the commander sees you. But Maya was already moving into position, her body settling into a prone firing stance that looked nothing like the careful positioning of someone who had never handled such a weapon. Her movements were economical, practiced, automatic, the muscle memory of training that had been dormant but never forgotten. Through the Barrett's advanced optics, Sultan Valley transformed from a confusing maze of smoke and gunfire into a clearly defined tactical problem with visible solutions. Maya could see the hostile positions that were invisible to personnel using standard infantry weapons. She could identify the specific locations where enemy fire was originating, calculate the range and windage required for precision engagement, and prioritize targets based on their threat level to the convoy. The first shot broke with textbook precision at 10:51 hours. The heavy .50 caliber round traveled 847 meters through clear desert air and struck its target with devastating effect. The enemy position that had been delivering the most accurate fire against the convoy went silent immediately, and the volume of incoming rounds decreased noticeably. "Holy shit," Vance whispered, his voice carrying a mixture of awe and disbelief. "Who the hell made that shot?" Maya didn't answer. She was already adjusting for her second target, a machine gun position on the ridgeline that was preventing the convoy's medics from reaching the overturned vehicle. Her breathing was controlled, her heart rate steady, her mind processing ballistic calculations with the same precision she normally applied to medical procedures. The second shot eliminated the machine gun position and opened a corridor that allowed two operators to reach the lead vehicle and begin extracting wounded personnel. Maya watched through her scope as they dragged an unconscious team member to relative safety. His survival now depended on medical treatment that Maya would provide as soon as she finished eliminating the threats that were preventing her from doing her job. But the most critical threat remained, a sniper position approximately 900 meters distant that had been harassing the convoy with precision fire since the engagement began. The hostile shooter was well concealed, disciplined, and accurate enough to pin down multiple operators while remaining invisible to conventional counter-sniper efforts. Maya studied the position through her optics, noting wind indicators, range markers, and the subtle signs that revealed exactly where the enemy sniper was concealed. This was the shot that would either save the convoy or expose her position to concentrated return fire. There would be no second chance. She controlled her breathing, calculated the precise adjustments required for wind and elevation, and squeezed the trigger with the same steady pressure she used when suturing critical wounds. The third shot traveled through morning air that seemed to hold its breath, crossed nearly a kilometer of hostile terrain, and found its target with mathematical precision. The enemy sniper position went silent, and suddenly Salton Valley was quiet, except for the distant sound of approaching helicopters and the voices of operators calling for medical assistance. Maya set the Barrett aside and grabbed her trauma bag. She had work to do, and people who needed her to be the medic they thought she was rather than the sniper she had just proven herself to be. But as she moved toward the casualties, she caught Commander Graves staring at her with an expression that suggested their next conversation would be unlike any they had shared during her 18 months of medical service. The after-action debrief took place in a secured room at FOB Sultan, with only essential personnel present and recording devices notably absent. Commander Graves sat across from Maya with the Barrett positioned on the table between them, its presence somehow more significant now that everyone in the room knew what it had accomplished in the right hands. 3 shots, Graves said quietly, his voice carrying none of the authority that had characterized their previous interactions. 3 targets at ranges exceeding 800 meters, 100% hit probability under combat conditions with a weapon you've never been trained on. Maya maintained her professional composure, though she could feel the weight of scrutiny from every person in the room. Sir, the medical situation required immediate threat reduction to allow for casualty treatment. I used available resources to accomplish mission objectives. Available resources, Graves repeated, and there was something in his tone that suggested he found her choice of words interesting. Dr. Chen, that Barrett isn't just any available resource. It's a precision instrument that requires specialized training, extensive practice, and years of experience to operate effectively under combat conditions. The silence in the room stretched long enough for Maya to hear her own heartbeat and consider exactly how much truth this conversation required. She had spent 18 months maintaining operational security about abilities that went far beyond medical training, but the evidence of her marksmanship was impossible to deny or explain away. Sir, she said finally, I may have failed to mention some aspects of my background during initial deployment briefings. Graves leaned forward slightly, his expression shifting from confusion to the beginning of understanding. What aspects, Doctor? Maya reached into her medical bag and withdrew the leather journal she had hoped never to reveal. She placed it on the table next to the Barrett, where its worn cover and filled pages seemed to tell their own story about preparation that had nothing to do with medical emergencies. Before medical school, I spent 4 years in civilian marksmanship programs, long-range precision shooting, ballistic calculation, advanced optics. I competed nationally in several precision rifle disciplines and maintained my skills through independent practice. Graves opened the journal and found pages of handwritten notes, wind calculations, range estimations, bullet drop compensations, and target analysis techniques that belonged in a sniper's field manual rather than a doctor's equipment. The precision of the notation and the depth of technical knowledge represented years of dedicated study. Dr. Chen, he said slowly, these calculations are at the level of military precision marksman training. This isn't civilian sport shooting. No, sir, it isn't. I studied everything available about military precision shooting because I believed that understanding ballistics at that level would make me a more effective trauma surgeon. Knowing how projectiles behave in ballistic gel helped me better understand wound treatment and surgical approaches. It was true, but it wasn't the complete truth, and Maya could see that Graves recognized the gaps in her explanation. The complete truth was more complex and more classified than she was prepared to reveal in a room that might not have the appropriate security clearances. Petty Officer Vance, who had witnessed Maya's shooting firsthand, looked between the journal and the Barrett with growing comprehension. Ma'am, those shots today, you weren't just lucky, were you? No, petty officer. I was prepared. Commander Graves closed the journal and studied Maya's face with the intensity of someone trying to solve a puzzle with pieces that didn't quite fit together. Dr. Chen, I need to ask you directly. Have you ever received formal military marksmanship training? Maya met his gaze steadily. Sir, I cannot answer that question in this forum. The response carried implications that everyone in the room understood, but no one was prepared to pursue. There were levels of classification that existed above their current clearance, operations that remained compartmentalized even among personnel who trusted each other with their lives. Graves nodded slowly, accepting the limitation while filing the information for future reference. Very well. What I can say is that your actions today saved lives and turned a potential disaster into a successful mission completion. The questions about your background can be addressed through appropriate channels. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a challenge coin bearing the insignia of Naval Special Warfare Command. The coin was worn smooth by handling, suggesting it had been carried for years rather than stored in a display case. Dr. Chen, this coin was given to me by the commanding officer who taught me that marksmanship isn't just about hitting targets. It's about understanding when to shoot and when not to shoot, and having the courage to make that decision when lives depend on it. He placed the coin on the table next to her journal. You demonstrated that understanding today. Whatever your background, wherever you learned those skills, you used them to save American lives under conditions that would have challenged our best-trained marksmen. Maya looked down at the coin, understanding the significance of the gesture and the weight of recognition it represented. In the special operations community, challenge coins weren't given lightly, and they carried meaning that went far beyond simple appreciation. Thank you, sir. There's more, Dr. Chen. Based on today's performance, I'm recommending you for additional training that will formalize capabilities you've already demonstrated. If you're willing, there are programs that can make better use of your combined medical and marksmanship skills. Maya considered the offer, weighing the appeal of returning to work that utilized her full capabilities against the simplicity of maintaining her current role. For 18 months, she had been content to remain in the background, providing medical support while keeping her other abilities hidden. But today had demonstrated that circumstances could arise where those abilities were essential for mission success. What kind of programs, sir? The kind that don't officially exist but accomplish missions that conventional teams can't handle. Medical personnel with advanced tactical capabilities, combat doctors who can provide precision fire support when necessary, personnel who can transition seamlessly between healing and protecting depending on mission requirements. It was exactly the kind of opportunity Maya had trained for years earlier, before circumstances had led her to seek the anonymity of conventional medical service. The chance to serve at the intersection of medical expertise and tactical precision, where saving lives might require taking them under carefully controlled circumstances. I'm interested, sir. 6 months later, Dr. Maya Chen stood in a briefing room that didn't appear on any base map, surrounded by personnel whose names appeared in no conventional military database. Her medical bag sat beside equipment that officially didn't exist, and her mission parameters were classified at levels that required clearances beyond what most general officers possessed. She was no longer just a medic, but she was still a doctor first. The difference was that now she could protect her patients with capabilities that went far beyond conventional medical training. The leather journal sat open on her desk, its pages filled with new calculations and techniques that reflected training she had received in facilities that existed in the shadows between different branches of the military. But the core mission remained the same: keep people alive by whatever means necessary. Dr. Maya Chen had found her place at the intersection of healing and precision, where saving lives sometimes required the courage to take a shot that would change everything. And when the next impossible situation arose, because there would always be a next time, she would be ready to do whatever the mission required, whether that meant suturing wounds or delivering precision fire at ranges most people considered impossible. The Barrett .50 caliber rifle had been returned to Commander Graves, but Maya now had access to equipment that matched her capabilities rather than limiting them. She was still a doctor, still dedicated to preserving life above all else. She was just a doctor who could reach out and touch targets at distances measured in kilometers rather than meters, whenever the protection of lives required that level of precision.